Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 31 of 5 Reasons Not to Harm Your Loved Ones During Quarantine. We have some pretty exciting stuff to talk about today. First and foremost, I wanted to let everyone know who is struggling with filling out unemployment forms or doesn't understand things on the website that there is a couple Facebook pages that have been created by various people around the state that are just question and answer to help you figure things out. At our office, we're also willing to try and help you figure your way through the unemployment sign up or the stimulus to track your stimulus payment or some of the other financial issues, filling out SBA loan applications, filling out the PPP. So we're here to help you if you need that assistance. But there is a Facebook page called Rebound. There's another one called Rebound West Michigan. And there's another one called Michigan Unemployment Public Help Page during COVID-19. And these are all great resources on the Rebound page. On Friday at 1 p.m., they will be doing an interview of someone from UIA live on the Rebound Facebook page. So that might be helpful. And also at the University of Michigan, there's a workers' rights clinic that's also free help for people in dealing with their unemployment claims. There are, as of today, 4,179 deaths in Michigan from COVID-19 and 44,397 cases. We have different factors that are elevating our numbers. First and foremost is we have an increased number of testing. We also have, with the antibody test, although it's not as reliable as they had hoped. Science is not discovering things as fast as the virus is creating things for them to study. Some cases where people never knew they had it, but now have the antibody, they're being counted as well in our count. For our state statistics. But the bottom line is that we have areas of the state that are strictly complying, and you're seeing a flattening of the curve and less cases, while in Western Michigan, heading up north, we see an increase in cases. So they're kind of balancing it all out. Other things that are happening in regards to COVID-19, the Michigan Republicans have filed a lawsuit against Governor Whitmer and her emergency powers. As we talked about yesterday and a little bit last week, she has now, over the objection of the legislature, she has extended the Michigan state of emergency through the end of May, like May 28th, I think is the date. That is different than the stay-at-home order, which is set to expire on May 15th. Her emergency powers and the emergency state that she's declared in Michigan allows her authority to grant executive orders. It also allows Michigan to obtain funding and supplies and whatever's necessary to protect the public from other states and from the federal government. It allows her to order different industries to change their production. For example, our breweries went from making beer to making hand sanitizer. So those are all things that she has authority to do when our state is in a declared emergency, which she would not have authority to do if we were just open and going about business as usual. General Motors has announced that they're going to start production in the U.S. and Canada on May 18th with extensive safety measures. It's really interesting if you want to read about it. They've really, this is so thought out and so thoughtful. And on that front, I will say that our seniors in high school who have been definitely feeling the pain and disappointment of all of this, at least in my son's situation, they are going to graduate. They are having a graduation. It will be similar to a drive-in movie where all the families will be in their individual cars, and at least they're having one. So we just found that out last night. Details to follow, but sounds better than nothing. Another thing that has happened that, again, I wonder sometimes if people are really thinking. There is a Sterling Heights nursing home that has been admitting new people into its facility, and several people that they have admitted came in with positive COVID-19 symptoms, and now it is spreading like wildfire through that facility in Sterling Heights. So that is, I don't know. I don't get it. But so that's kind of the COVID-19 update, although I have to say that our other discussions of today are not unrelated. One of the things that has occurred this morning is a class action lawsuit was filed in Wayne County against the county and specifically some high-ranking members of the Sheriff's Department regarding the conditions in the jail. It's really interesting when you look at it because it was a 71-page lawsuit, and it cites that basically they're seeking mass release from the largest county jail. We have 80 in Michigan due to the COVID-19 outbreak. And steps have been taken since March 10th to reduce the population of the jail, but this is about the concerns of the conditions for the inmates who have been left behind. Remember, part of the reason that a jail is such a dangerous place and a breeding ground for the disease is because of the number of people who go in and out every day. And I'm not just talking about inmates and criminals and bad, allegedly bad people, but we're talking about the sheriff's deputies, the probation officers, the people who work there, make the food, supervise the inmates, teach the classes, doctors, nurses, psychologists, mental health professionals. There are an exorbitant number of people coming in and out of a jail every single day, even that we don't think about. And since the beginning of March, there have been, for example, there were 1,381 inmates in the Wayne County Jail on March 10th. And now there's about somewhere between 550 and 800. I've seen different things that I've read have said numbers in between there. There are more people on tether right now because they were released from the Wayne County Jail. It's about 869, 870. Then there are actually inside the 3 facilities that make up the Wayne County Jail, that being Dickinson, the old jail, and the new jail. But the lawsuit, as I said, it deals with the inmates left behind. There are 113 inmates and 200 Sheriff's Department staffers that have had contact with the virus, and 4 have died, along with the 2 corrections officers who died and 2 Wayne County jail doctors. Yes, I'm outside. A commander and a medical director who all also died, but those were not actually published as to who had died. So this lawsuit has also brought a lot of things to the forefront that we didn't know as members of the public until recently. The lawsuit talks about, and again, there was a really detailed article about this both in the Free Press and the news today. So if you want more information, you can look it up that way. But basically, it's very simple. the things that the public has been told that we need to do. We need to wash our hands, we need to clean our surfaces, our surroundings, we need to access testing promptly if we have any symptoms, and we need to wear protective gear and masks, and this isn't happening either to the inmates or the people responsible for the inmates. And they're saying that, they did do a deep cleaning in March when this all started, and sorry, that's really loud. They'll be gone in a second. They did do a deep cleaning back in the beginning of March when this all started, but a lot of the jails are cleaned by the inmates, and the less inmates you have, the less people or muscle you have to do the cleaning. There's also allegations that they don't have a chance to keep 6 feet apart. That's not what jails were built for. They weren't built for people to be far apart. They were built for them to be on top of each other. So it's very contrary to the social distancing policies that we're trying to achieve. The other issue is that there isn't the ability to mass quarantine within a jail. And a lot of times requests for medical attention are dismissed or as unwarranted, or you're just faking, or and that obviously is a very dangerous thing right now. There has been a collaborative team of the prosecutor, a group of defense attorneys, and the chief judge in Wayne County determining which inmates can be released. They're balancing the well-being and safety of the public versus the need to solve this problem within the jails, and to lower the jail population. There are less new inmates coming into the jail because our courts are pretty much closed, and a lot of people are staying home. So crime, although I haven't checked the statistics in a couple of weeks, appears to be on the downside, at least street crime. Theft, burglary, robbery, arguments, fights, things like that. It's really interesting when you look at the plaintiffs and who they represent. And remember, the plaintiffs are the people who are bringing the lawsuit. They're the people who are suing. And in this instance, one of them is 59 and suffers from stage 3 prostate cancer, diabetes, high blood pressure, and he has an umbilical hernia. He's been in custody since March 20th, 2020, which is after the stay-at-home order. He has not been able to get his radiation treatments, and which he was getting 5 times per week to prevent his cancer from spreading. He is supposed to be serving a sentence for theft that was 365 days in the Wayne County Jail. So that is the lead plaintiff. Other people there's a 26-year-old with diabetes and asthma. He's also waiting for his theft charge. There's a 36-year-old suffering from a heart murmur and localized paralysis and chronic pain from a bullet lodged in his spine. He is serving a 12-month sentence for drunk driving. Another one is 38 years old. He has sickle cell disease, hypertension, and diabetes. He was originally in jail for, I believe he was originally in jail for either a drunk driving or a driver's license issue, driving on a suspended license, something like that. I apologize that I don't remember exactly what his original sentence was, but he got in a fight with an inmate and the inmate got killed. So now he is awaiting trial on a homicide case. And he got in that fight in October of 2019, and he has been waiting ever since then. There's also a man who's 30 years old, who's a father of 5, who's 2 months into a 9-month sentence for drug charges. There's another man who's 33 years old and just can't afford to pay his bond. So stay tuned. That is something that is very interesting, and there are some really wonderful volunteer groups that, along with the ACLU and some other civil rights groups, that have been trying to help these vulnerable inmates and save their lives. Another vulnerable population, obviously, is always women, and we don't usually think about women in prison or women in jail. A majority of the population are men. And recently, there was a study conducted by the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights about the civil rights of women in prison. And the report is really, really interesting, and it talks about the disparity in not just the facilities and the services, but the different issues that arise when women are behind bars than when men are behind bars. And some of the just interesting statistics, I love them, are like between 1980 and 2016, the number of women incarcerated increased 730%. Think about that. In 2016, there were 112,000 incarcerated women, and 7%, that is 7% of the total prison population. This is in the country, not just in Michigan. In state and federal prisons combined, that's what those statistics were. Now, about 88% of those who are serving sentences in state prison, 7,000 of them are women serving life sentences. The report found that the years 2000 to 2016, the increased rate for women increased in 4 states while decreasing for men. In Michigan, women were incarcerated at a rate of 44 per 100,000, which was below the national rate of 57 per 100,000. And the state with the highest amount of women was Oklahoma, and that was 149 per 100,000. So that is, again, just some stunning numbers that we don't think about. 73% of women inmates have mental health issues, in contrast to 55% of men and 11% of the general population. The rate of women in prison with HIV is twice that of men. 4% of women incarcerated are pregnant. And a report shows that in 1 year, there were 753 live births, 406 miscarriages, and 7 stillbirths or newborn deaths. Women in prison are less likely than non-incarcerated women to have a preterm birth, 10% of live births generally, but 6% of in-prison births. And then what happens to these kids? Again, another issue that when men are behind bars you don't have to deal with. This also, all of these numbers and this report and these studies, the study underlying the report is pretty new, but the underlying studies are data that really, it is pre-COVID-19. So take this and just kind of think about in your head what we know about what's happening in the different jails and prisons, and now how it's impacting women, how it's impacting the children of these women, and also how it's impacting the children at home that they already have. The The report also found that because they're not equipped for the mental health issues that women present, they end up spending about 1/5 of their prison budget on prisoner-related mental health issues alone. Some institutions require prisoners to pay copays, which means that many choose to forego medical services due to the cost of the copay. And they've found that 70% of women can't afford the copay and forego medical services, whether that is prenatal services, mental health services, withdrawal services, or just illness. Right now in Michigan, thanks to a Supreme Court order as well as just one of Governor Whitmer's executive orders, the co-pays are waived for all prisoners now. So that is a good thing for people. It's also interesting to note that the chance at early release for women is less likely for men. And the reason is because what earns men early release in some cases is that they can give helpful information to law enforcement, which then leads them to, they can snitch. And then it leads them to other arrests, other criminals off the street. And that in turn, is the quid pro quo, and that you give them the information, they benefit from it, society benefits from it, your sentence is reduced. It's very rare that women have that kind of information that would be worth anything to law enforcement. Also, some of the diversionary programs that are available to men, such as boot camp instead of going to prison, or some kind of workforces, are not available to women. They're only available to men. So a lot of the alternatives to incarceration or diversionary programs that men find, very useful in cutting down their time behind bars, just simply not available. Or women's health issues would preclude them from eligibility if they were available. So it's kind of a vicious circle. It's no surprise that minority women are generally incarcerated at a greater rate than white women, and Native American women are incarcerated at a rate 6.7 times greater than Black women and 3.9 times that of white women, which is another just incredible statistic. The report also talks about the dangers to LGBT women and transgender women. And until I read this report, I really never thought about it. You hear the stories, you've watched Orange is the New Black, that there are all kinds of conduct going on, but I never really thought about it from a safety and services perspective of, in this, time of supposed equal rights, how these populations would be affected and need to have special precautions, protections, whether it's men or women. And they haven't studied what happens to men who are transgender or part of the LGBT community, but I can tell you what they found in this report. It's all based on a 2017 study, and it says 42% of women in prison are in a sexual minority, 33% identify as lesbian or bisexual. LGBT inmates are more likely, 28% versus 18%, than non-LGBT prisoners to be housed in solitary confinement or in segregated housing. Transgender prisoners have additional challenges, including that they are 10 times more likely than the general prison population to be sexually assaulted while incarcerated. The problem with isolating these different populations is that then you see an increase in physical and psychological issues and the mental health struggles that we already talked about. They're just not equipped to handle. The prisons have been and jails have been responding to the transgender community by putting them in solitary confinement or protective custody, specifically, and that has a whole nother set of issues. And, you know, there's a lot of people who have the mentality that, like, oh, they're in prison, you know, throw away the key, they harmed the community, whatever it is, they did horrible things. Remember, there will be a day when most of these people are released. So we don't want to throw away the key. We shouldn't throw away the key. We should be having equal access to services and programs for women that are available to men. Why do we care more about rehabilitating men than we do about rehabilitating women when they're all being punished, and sometimes for the exact same crime? There is, this was a little bit surprising to me, but women prisoners reported prisoner sexual incidents at a greater rate than male prisoners. And in federal prisons, it was 6.9% versus 1.7% in men. And in state prisons, it was 13.7% versus 4.2%. So they're not even close. Incarcerated women who are mothers are at greater risk of losing their parental rights, having their rights terminated to their children, even when there's been no allegations of abuse or neglect, than do male counterparts. They seem to file against women much more frequently than they do against men. 1 in 8 incarcerated moms have lost their parental rights. There is been an effort to create a gender-responsive, trauma-informed approach that includes a multi-dimensional focus that considers social and cultural factors and does not coddle the inmate, but provides the prisoner an opportunity to heal from prior trauma, learn necessary skills, and become better prepared for re-entry into society. I read that because it's a mouthful. But really, so now they are creating this, or it has been created, and it is the goal of this gender-responsive, trauma-informed approach is to equalize the rights and programs between women and men in prison, to reduce the highest numbers and highest number of inmates who are women who need mental health services because of the conditions and because of some of the ramifications or collateral consequences that they can't control, such as termination of parental rights, their children going to foster care, whatever it may be. They have seen, since the gender-responsive trauma-informed practice has been in place, that there has been a 62% decrease in assaults against staff within women's prisons, a 54% decrease in inmate assaults, a 46% decrease in inmate fights, and a 23% decline in segregation placements, a 6% decline in disciplinary reports, and there were 60% fewer suicides and a 13% decline in self-injurious behavior. So this approach is working. It's not adopted across the country yet. It is, of course, in its pilot stages, but this report was just released, and you can go to the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights website, and you can see the whole report, and you can also you can Google, because I like to always give you a Google search to find these things, women in prison, higher rate trauma than men. and you'll get a bunch of different resources. And also, you can go to the ACLU website, and I think they have some different resources about this as well, the Michigan ACLU website. So, so those were, kind of the interesting things for today. And so I will leave you with a reminder of the 5 reasons not to harm your loved ones while in quarantine. Number 1, protective services workers are essential. Number 2, the police are essential. Number 3, you just heard all about our jails and prisons and why you don't want to be there. Number 4, parents can get in trouble for kids being kids. And finally, number 5, barely anyone, if anyone, looks good in horizontal stripes. So with that, I wish you all to be healthy and happy and kind and have a really beautiful day and stay home. And I will see you tomorrow. Bye.